Hello, this is Lorcana Justice, and this is just a quick video to talk a little bit about the statistical changes that you introduce by choosing to play 60 or 62 cards. So if this is the first time you've taken a look at statistics in regards to Lorcana, I need to suggest Frank Karsten's article, Can Probability Theory Help You Build the Perfect Lorcana Deck, as a primer for this. This is an excellent read, and it covers all of the core concepts that are required to understand some of the tables and figures that we're looking at, and I'll include a link to this in the description down below. So the question I wanted to look at today was 60 versus 62. How does that impact your chances of drawing a key piece in your mulligan? So in the latest DLC, I played Ruby Sapphire and was playing a similar list to Kang, and he opted to play 62 cards, including 4 copies of Tipo and 4 copies of One Jump, for a total of 8 possible chances to ramp on 2. I opted to play a list that had 60 cards and only 7 copies of those cards in the main event, and I wanted to know which one of those outcomes left you more likely to actually find the card you're looking for in your opening. So in this table, the number of cards you have in your deck is here. These are the number of copies of a type of card you have in your deck. Your chance to see one of those cards or more in your opening 7, and then your chance to see those in your mulligan, depending on how many copies you have left. This table on the right here, you can enter how many cards you're going to mulligan, and then for the number of copies of a card you are playing, you can see the chance to actually open them, one or more copies, or the chance to not find them. So the simple answer to this is that the number of copies you choose to play is more important than the number of cards you choose to play. If you opt to play 7 or 8 copies of a card, you actually increase your chances of finding a card in your opening 7 or in your mulligan by a much higher overall percentage than playing 2 extra cards. So these are like-for-like comparisons of playing 7 copies of a card in a list of either 60 or 62, and the difference that you introduce to finding them. This is just between each of these individual steps of in your opening or in your mulligan. And you can see that you actually reduce your probability of finding one of these cards by about 1.5% in the worst case scenario. This is almost exactly the same for playing 8 copies of a card in 60 or 62. But when you look at the difference between playing 7 or 8 copies of a card in either 60 or in 62, the overall difference that you introduce by that is closer to 5% in a sort of reasonable mulligan scenario. So that's about 3 times larger impact by playing the additional copy of the card versus playing 2 additional cards in your deck. Last up here is just this little table of the net chance to find 0 copies of a card in your mulligan based on 7 or 8 copies in a 60 card list versus a 62 card list. So in a 60 card list, the difference between those is between 4.5 and 3.7%. And this is almost exactly the same in 62 cards, right? The relative difference between playing 7 or 8 copies is actually incredibly small. And then this last table down here is the difference for those scenarios when you're talking about playing 7 copies in 60 versus 62 or 8 copies in 60 versus 62. And so this is also basically just saying, by increasing your deck count by those 2 cards, you make your chances to find the card you're looking for in the mulligan worse by about 1%, which is to say, 1 game in 100, you're not going to see this card during your mulligan as a result of opting to play 60 versus 62 cards. Now, this doesn't cover other scenarios which might want to affect how you build your deck, the actual threat density of the cards that you choose to play versus choosing to play cards which ramp you or are less valuable late game. But just in the context of finding cards in your opening hands that are critical for your engine, the difference of playing 60 to 62 matters a lot less than the number of copies you choose to play.